Ever scroll through Reddit and find yourself, clicking on a thread that's just too juicy to resist?
Oh, yeah,
It's
definitely.
exactly what we're doing today. We're diving deep into a thread that asked, how often do you have sex with your long-term partner, spouse?
Mm. And
And
what's so captivating about this question is that it really taps into something so incredibly personal and often like shrouded in secrecy, right?
right.
The intimate lives of long-term
It's
couples.
one of those things, that people might whisper about with their closest friends, but rarely, like, discuss openly.
Right.
So this thread is like a window into a world we don't often get to see.
Yeah.
And the responses, I gotta say, were all over the maps.
Oh, for sure.
Some couples claimed to be going at it like rabbits,
Yeah.
while others admitted, like, it's been months, even years.
Yeah, and that range of experiences is precisely what makes this deep dive so fascinating because it challenges the notion that there's a right amount of sex in a long-term relationship.
Okay, so let's get into the nitty-gritty. We're talking about real people, sharing real experiences. So what were some of the standout responses that caught your eye?
Well, on one end of the spectrum, we had a commenter in their 70s who proudly declared they still enjoy intimacy with their partner once a week.
Wow.
And get this, a couple in their 20s chimed in saying that was their frequency too.
Wow. That's amazing. It really does show that age is just a number, right?
Yeah, it does.
But amidst all these, like, diverse responses, one comment stood out for a different reason. They said, keep in mind you only hear from people who have something to complain about on Reddit, so it skews the view.
Yeah.
What do you make of that observation?
Well, that's a really astute point. It highlights the potential bias inherent in online forums. People are often more motivated to share when they're unhappy or seeking validation for their, experiences.
Yeah.
So it's important to remember that this Reddit thread might not represent the full spectrum of experiences out there.
So we might be getting a slightly distorted view of reality.
Right.
It's like those online reviews. We tend to hear more from the extremes,
For sure.
while the majority in the middle stays silent.
Exactly. But even with that caveat in mind, this thread still offers valuable insights into the challenges and triumphs of intimacy in long-term relationships.
For instance, one of the terms that kept popping up was sexless relationship.
Right.
I have to admit, I'd heard the term before, but this thread made me realize just how common it, like, seems to be.
Yes, the statistic often cited is that up to 40% of long-term relationships might fall into this category, particularly after having children.
Wow. 40%. That's a significant portion of couples. And it raises some, like, important questions.
Yeah,
First, what exactly defines a sexless relationship?
right.
Is it just about the frequency, or is there more to it?
That's a great question, and there's actually some debate about the definition. Some experts define it as having sex less than 10 times per year, while others focus on the emotional experience. For some couples, infrequent sex might not be an issue if they, feel emotionally connected and fulfilled in other ways, but for others, it can lead to feelings of rejection, resentment, and even loneliness.
So it's not just about a number, it's about how both partners feel about the situation.
Absolutely. And this is where communication becomes crucial.
Yeah.
Couples need to be able to talk openly and honestly about their needs, desires, and any concerns they might have.
Because brushing it under the rug is never a good solution, right? It's likely to fester and create even bigger problems down the line.
Precisely. And what's so interesting about this Reddit thread is that it revealed a myriad of reasons why couples might experience a decline in sexual frequency.
Okay?
Some of the most common ones were age, life stages, especially like the demands of parenting and work stress, medical condition, and differing libidos between partners.
It's a reminder that relationships are dynamic and constantly evolving, right?
For sure.
What works in one stage of life might not work in another.
Yeah.
And what's considered normal can vary widely from couple to couple.
Right. And I think that's a really empowering message. It takes the pressure off trying to live up to some external standard
Right.
and encourages couples to find what feels authentic and fulfilling for them.
Okay, so we've established that there's no magic number
Right.
when it comes to sexual frequency in long-term relationships.
Yeah.
But what are some of the factors that contribute to a healthy and fulfilling intimate life, regardless of how often you're having sex?
Well, the Reddit thread provided some interesting insights into that as well. Many people emphasized the importance of connection beyond the physical act itself.
Such as? Give us some examples.
They talked about date nights, quality time, open communication, and making a conscious effort to nurture the relationship. It seems like the couples who were most satisfied with their intimate lives were those who prioritized connection and intimacy in all its forms.
That makes a lot of sense. You can't expect to jump into bed and have amazing sex if you haven't, like, nurtured the emotional connection and intimacy throughout the week. It's like expecting a plant to thrive without watering it.
That's a great analogy.
Yeah,
And it highlights the importance of being intentional about cultivating intimacy in our relationships. It doesn't just happen,
yeah.
magically. It requires effort, communication, and a willingness to prioritize each other.
So it's not just about scheduling sex once a week and checking it off your to-do list.
Definitely not. It's about creating a space for connection, both physically and emotionally.
And it seems like that's a theme that resonated with a lot of people in the Reddit thread.
Yeah.
They talked about the importance of feeling desired, appreciated, and connected to their partners, and that those feelings could be fostered through a variety of means, not just sex.
Exactly. And it's a reminder that intimacy can be expressed in many different ways through touch, words of affirmation, acts of service, gifts, and simply spending quality time together.
This is reminding me of something I read about the 5 love languages,
Right.
how people experience and express love in different ways.
That's a great connection. Understanding your partner's love language can be incredibly helpful in nurturing intimacy and connection.
This has been so insightful. It's made me think about my own relationship in a whole new light.
I'm glad to hear that. It's always fascinating to, explore these complex and personal topics.
And speaking of exploring, we've only just scratched the surface of this Reddit thread.
Oh, yeah.
There's so much more to unpack, including some of the more challenging aspects of navigating intimacy and long-term relationships.
You're right.
We still need to delve into the complexities of, like, differing libidos, the impact of life stages, and the role of communication in maintaining a healthy and fulfilling intimate life.
Yeah.
But before we dive into those topics, I want to take a moment to remind our listeners that we're here to create a space for open and honest conversations about the things that matter most.
And we believe that by sharing these diverse perspectives and experiences, we can all learn and grow together.
So if you're enjoying this deep dive, we encourage you to subscribe to Voices of the Soul and check out our YouTube channel, Shauna Polich, for more insightful conversations like this one.
We love connecting with our audience and hearing your thoughts and reflections on these important topics.
And now, without further ado, let's jump back into the Reddit thread and explore some of those more challenging aspects of intimacy and long-term relationships.
Welcome back to our deep dive into intimacy and long-term relationships.
We're picking up where we left off, exploring those challenging aspects you mentioned.
Right.
And one theme that really jumped out from the Reddit thread was the impact of life stages.
Yeah, it's fascinating how different phases of life bring their own unique set of challenges and opportunities when it comes to intimacy.
Right.
It's not a static thing.
For example, a lot of people were talking about how having children can completely change the, dynamic.
Absolutely. You're dealing with sleep deprivation, the constant demands of childcare,
Right.
and often a shift in focus from the romantic relationship to the needs of the little ones.
Yeah.
It's completely understandable that intimacy might, take a back seat during this time.
One commenter even joked about how their child is going through a not sleeping phase, and they'd gone 3 weeks without intimacy.
Wow.
The longest they'd ever gone. It's kind of
Yeah.
funny, but also, relatable, right?
It is.
Yeah.
And it's a good reminder that even couples with strong relationships and healthy libidos can go through periods of decreased sexual frequency due to those external factors.
And it's not just about having young children either.
Right.
People also mentioned the challenges of juggling demanding careers
Yeah.
and maintaining a healthy work-life balance.
For sure.
Trying to find the energy for intimacy after a long day can feel impossible sometimes.
Yes. When you're constantly stressed and exhausted, it can be tough to muster the desire, for sure.
Yeah.
One commenter in their 40s said, middle-aged, obese, and falling apart, we average about once a week.
Mm-hmm.
There's a sense of resignation there, almost like they've accepted this as their new normal.
It makes you wonder how much of this decline is due to actual physical changes
Yeah.
and how much is tied to societal expectations
Right.
or even internalized beliefs about aging. Do we start to believe we're supposed to be less sexual as we get older?
That's such an interesting question.
Yeah.
I don't think there's a simple answer, but it's worth considering how cultural norms and our own beliefs might shape our experiences as we age.
Yeah.
Maybe we absorb those messages without even realizing it.
Okay, so we've talked about the influence of life stages.
Right.
But another major theme that emerged from the thread was the issue of differing libidos.
This is a common challenge, and it can be a source of a lot of tension, frustration, and even guilt.
There were quite a few comments from people who felt rejected or unwanted because their partner wasn't interested in sex as often as they were.
Right.
And on the flip side, some people felt pressured to engage in intimacy even when they weren't, feeling it.
It's a delicate balance.
Right.
One commenter shared that their wife legitimately wants sex once every week or two on average.
Okay.
But she indulges him more often because he has a higher libido.
It sounds like they found a way to navigate their differences respectfully, which is great.
It is, but what happens when communication breaks down or compromise feels impossible?
Right.
It can really put a strain on the relationship.
That's where seeking professional help might be beneficial.
Yeah.
A therapist specializing in relationships and sexuality can provide tools and strategies for couples to navigate these challenges.
Absolutely. And speaking of navigating challenges, let's shift gears a bit and talk about those comments that emphasize the importance of connection beyond just the physical act of sex.
Okay.
It's about cultivating intimacy in all its form.
I loved reading those.
Yeah,
Several people talked about prioritizing date nights, quality time,
right.
and making an effort to stay emotionally connected with their partner.
And person said, it's important to keep that connection going. We always have a date night Friday or Saturday.
Yeah.
And another chimed in saying intentionality is key. Date nights are a big part of why our marriage still works after 27 years and 3 grown kids.
It highlights how crucial it is to nurture that emotional intimacy.
Yeah.
Because if you're not feeling close and connected, it's going to be hard to generate that, spark in the bedroom.
Exactly. And
Uh,
sometimes that means making a conscious effort to prioritize quality time together, even when life gets hectic.
So what we're hearing from these Redditors is that sexual frequency isn't the only measure of a healthy relationship.
Right. It's just one piece of a much larger puzzle.
And what are some of those other pieces? What else contributes to that long-lasting, fulfilling connection?
Well, we've touched on a few already. Open and honest communication, mutual respect, a willingness to compromise, shared values and goals, and a strong emotional connection.
Right.
It's about feeling seen, heard, and understood by your partner.
And sometimes that might mean stepping outside of your comfort zone and trying new things to keep the spark alive.
Exactly.
Yeah.
It's about being open to growth and evolution within the relationship.
Yeah.
Because let's face it, what worked for you 5 years ago might not be working now.
Right.
And that's okay.
Right.
Relationships are meant to evolve.
So we've delved into the impact of life stages, the complexities of differing libidos,
Right.
and the importance of nurturing emotional intimacy.
Yeah.
What other gems did we uncover from this Reddit thread?
Well, there were some pretty extreme responses that we haven't discussed yet, and
Yeah.
also some reflections on why this topic can be so sensitive for some people.
Yeah.
There's still a lot to unpack.
I'm intrigued.
Yeah.
Let's dive into those in the final part of our deep dive. All right, we're back for the final part of our deep dive into intimacy and long-term relationships. As we've been sifting through these raw and honest Reddit responses, it's striking to see the sheer diversity of experiences.
Yeah, for sure. It really underscores the fact that there's no one-size-fits-all answer when it comes to intimacy.
Right.
What works for one couple might be completely different for another.
Exactly. And I think it's important to acknowledge those more extreme responses we mentioned earlier.
Right.
The ones that really highlight that spectrum. We had folks proudly proclaiming they're still intimate daily after decades together, and then others admitting it's been years since they last experienced that with their partner.
What's fascinating is that both ends of the spectrum can exist within what people consider, happy and fulfilling relationships.
Yeah.
It challenges our assumptions about what's normal or healthy.
Right. One commenter even said, "My virginity has come back."
Oh, wow.
It's a statement that could be seen as humorous or heartbreaking, depending on the individual's perspective.
Absolutely. And it circles back to that idea we touched on earlier. It's not just about the frequency. It's about how both partners feel about the situation and whether their needs are being met.
It's a good reminder that intimacy isn't solely defined by the physical act of sex, right?
Right.
It's about connection, closeness, and feeling loved and desired by your partner. And that can manifest in so many different ways.
We heard from couples who focus on date nights, cuddling, or simply spending quality time together to nurture their, emotional intimacy. They've found what works for them.
And that's such an important takeaway for anyone listening. It's about finding what works for you and your partner, being open to adapting and evolving as your relationship, changes over time.
It's a journey, not a destination, right?
Exactly. So as we wrap up this exploration of intimacy and long-term relationships, what are some key insights you hope our listeners will take away from this deep dive?
Well, first and foremost, I hope it encourages people to let go of the idea that there's a right amount of sex in a relationship. What matters most is open communication, mutual respect, and prioritizing connection and intimacy in all its forms.
Well said. And I'd add that it's okay to seek help and support if you're struggling. There's no shame in reaching out to a therapist or counselor who can provide guidance and tools for navigating these challenges.
Absolutely. We often try to solve these things on our own, but sometimes an outside perspective can be incredibly, helpful.
And speaking of support and connection, we'd love for you to join our community of listeners who are passionate about exploring the complexities of human experience.
Yes. If you enjoyed this deep dive, make sure to subscribe to Voices of the Soul and check out our YouTube channel, Shauna Polich, for more thought-provoking conversations.
We're so grateful to have you on this journey with us.
Until next time, keep those conversations going and remember to nurture intimacy in all its, beautiful forms.